Welcome, dear listeners. Make yourselves comfortable. Though that comfort may soon fray, tonight's carefully curated tales promise to keep you awake long after dawn. Their chilling echoes destined to haunt your thoughts. Let us guide you into the deepest shadows, where true dread awaits. Story 1. I stared with confusion at my phone. The rest of the gang were all in on this Monopoly game. I swear to beep. If you get free parking, I will literally beep your beep face, said Evelyn Ravi, rolled the dice in his hands. Beep, come on. Beep, sweet baby Jesus. I just need a beep for beep. He dropped them onto the board. Beep, he said, probably biffing it like always I try to make sense of it. Just a word on my screen, black text on an all-white background. A rather classical-looking font. Beep, hide, beep, I tapped, rather impatiently, on the expensive black rectangle. The text, wouldn't he disappear? Beep, AJ beep, Evelyn called, like a teacher busting a student. You re-beep addicted. Play board games like a normal human adult. Yeah, I sorry. A few more desperate finger pecks at the screen. Then I turned to holding the power button down for an extended period. With my free hand, I grabbed the dice, rolled a 3, landed on beep B and O railroad beep after 2 seconds of thought nah. Beep railroads. I said, of course. We were NT animals. If someone didn't want to buy a property, that was fine. No auctions or any of that nonsense. Beep house rules beep back to the phone as Hyro, on my left, took the cubes and prepared to drag his sorry little shoe across Beep Gobep to collect his $200. A minute with the power button. Didn't he do anything? We were entering factory, reset territory. I contemplated borrowing Ravi's laptop to Google whatever the beep this might have been. I felt the apartment rumble, albeit just for a split second, as if we were on the edge of an earthquake. I tensed briefly. The background noise from the TV beep. No one wants this beep. Auto-playing on Netflix disappeared, following the faint sound of the flicker of static. Ravi was the first to get up. I don't, he said, talking slowly as if not to jinx it. I don't beep think beep. That was an earthquake. He examined the TV, confused at the outage. He checked the wires. Shouldn't he be the breaker? I don't have that much stuff plugged in, do I? I grappled with the sad, likely beefic head beep state of my phone, and that weird word staring me down. Beep, that S beep weird. I heard Hyro say, half-laughing head lifted. What? I asked to catch Hyro, turning his phone to me. His home screen, too, had been replaced by black text, atop white. Hide Evelyn, as anti-technology as it comes, had properly clocked this reprieve as her time to quickly respond. to long, outstanding texts. The beep, she said. What is this? At my confused look, bordering on scowl. Beep resting scowl face beep. She flipped her phone around to show me the damage. It was the same on hers. I grew a bit nervous. Ravi, where's your phone? I asked him. I am sure it is somewhere, he said. Still tinkering with the TV, likely not due to any of his troubleshooting. It flashed back to life. Red power light at the base blinking steadily a simple message now appeared on the big screen. Hide, Ravi asked, grabbing the remote and pressing buttons to switch back to Netflix. But nothing was registering. Dude, I said. He turned around. I showed him my phone Hyro, and Evelyn showed theirs. That S, he looked back at the TV, then at us again. Wait, beefow, is that possible? Beep, is that like an Amber Alert? Hyro asked. I mean, I guess, but that S a push notification. This is like. Beep completely overtaking the screen beep. Ravi, S brows furrowed. On different hardware, too. A hack. I asked, he shrugged. That S kind of a weird hack, no. Government experiment. Hyro, again a thought came over me. I walked to the balcony, slid the door open, stepped out onto it. Eye of Sauron D, the city, from Ravi, S 14th floor apartment. In the neighboring apartment towers, most of the units had blinds down, curtains closed, the few unshuttered. However, Beep I felt like that guy from Rear Window Beep. Contained strangers staring perplexed at their phones, at their computers, the sides of bolted-to-the-wall TVs, barely visible to me, displayed the same white background with text atop it. What I was seeing, everyone else was seeing. The others joined me on the balcony. Whatever it is, it S at least hit this block, I said. I looked down at the city streets. Most of the people below caught in a similar holding pattern of standing frozen, heads fixed to their devices. I guess we don't have anything to call the cops with. Hyro, I am sure they re-aware. Me, maybe wait it out until they fix it. Ravi I nodded, and yet I could tell Evelyn was a bit perturbed, forcing magnetic thoughts to imbue her silence with weight. Thoughts. I asked her. I mean, should we do it? She asked. Do what? Ravi. Hide. Her again. Hide where? Ravi again. I don't know, she said. I mean, we're already in my apartment. I am sure that is good enough, right? He said a pause. Let us not lose our heads. Ravi continued. This is nuts. But it S, not I mean it S, not like. Beep literally hide, beep right. Hyro clicked his fingers. What if it S viral marketing? Like for a movie. Hyro, with the necessary but unintentional levity. Beep hacking our phones, so we can use them. Beep, I don't know if that s in Lionsgate s purview. Man, I said then. Head turned to Evelyn, but beefied. Beep the flicker in her eyes, more than meant that she decided with the light bulb in her head. She returned to the inside and got to exploring Ravi S. apartment carefully. What are you doing? Ravi asked, trailing. Hyro and I followed. I don't care if I look beep. It could be a warning. Maybe something is happening, she said. We re in a box, basically, said Ravi. We refine Ev. But the beep thing. Beep, she motioned to the TV, then to her own phone. Says beefied beep. Maybe it s beep that beep, literal. She continued scouting, finally settling on the sliding closet in Ravi S. room, the best she could come up with in his 600 square foot quarters. ILL do here, unless you think they're s better. Beep, Evelyn beep. Ravi Stressgy shuffled in, past hung garments, scooching to the end to make space. I am gonna close the door soon. And if you all beep really beep, my friends, ULL join me. Awkward silence until Hyro chimed first. I mean, guess it s good to be safe, right? He went for it, second guessed for a second, then committed to entering. You guys get the luxury of laughing at me forever if I am dumb win-win. She called while Hyro wedged in beside her, a compelling argument, certainly begrudgingly. I followed, tucking in next under Ravi S. dress clothes. There was still room for him inside his own closet. Beep, beep, he caved, joining last. Sliding the door closed to introduce darkness, I went back to my phone. Still that classical font. Still that mandate. How long do we have to stay in here? Ravi asked. 5 minutes, she said. Yeesh, he tagged, and then we sat in stillness for a while, distant beep tick tick ticks beep of the clock. In the living room, bringing down the blood pressure a tad. It all felt silly, kind of fun. Remember when we went camping at Sunlight Groves? Hyro asked. Beep glamping. Beep, Ravi clarified. Ev thought she saw a bear. Hyro laughed. A bear and its cub. It was dark. It beep looked like bears. Beep, she said, half laughing herself. I heard noises too. Bears at Beep Sunlight Groves. Beep, he said again. Saddest patch of trees in America. Guys, shut up. We rehear, so let us commit to the bit before the beep conjuring beep doll gets us, said Ravi. Surprisingly, not bitterly, we kept our traps zipped for another minute. Eyes at my phone again. Hide nonsensical. All of it, really. But in a way that was starting to sit more and more uncomfortably for me. What do you think it is? Hyro, whispered I, shook my head. Evelyn, with the light shrug. Ravi, with a deep inhale before speaking. I mean, be obviously sophisticated, Beep, he said, voice low. like it s, yeah. It s obviously beep something beep. I waved my phone. My bank is on this, and it s bricked now basically. I am beep. They LL figure something out. Said Ravi powerful knocks at his apartment door, all of a sudden, thundering. Hey, a voice called, muffled through the walls. Ravi, you there? Evelyn braced. Beep, who is that? Beep, a skinwalker, obviously, replied Ravi, kidding my neighbor Monica. Evelyn reached across me, and Hyro to tug at Ravi's sleeve. Beep, are you positive? Beep, beep, yes. Beep, and I should probably get it. You said 5 minutes, she said. Yes, but I am being a pretty trash neighbor right now. He replied the knocking persisted. So did the words. Beep, I have this weird thing on my phone, Brad. Has it too. It says hide. TV, same thing. Computer, same thing. I don't know how to reach anyone, or what to do. Beep, the neighbor trailed on. Ravi blew air out of his nose. All right, this is Beep. I am gonna know, said Evelyn. But then, all of a sudden, he stopped. We all stopped. Beep, I felt something beep. Something very, very real, no knocking anymore. Or at least, I couldn't hear anything. Not the tick of the clock, nor the soft rustle of us against clothing. It was like the world was holding its breath, like there was a beep presence beep right outside the closet. Then the sting of static in my ear before it passed. Whatever it was, the feeling dissipated. The sound returned, and I sneaked a glance at my phone. The word hide was gone, and replacing it was my home screen. The silence between the four of us was uncomfortable. Did you feel that? Evelyn finally whispered no. One said anything. Ravi outstretched his arm yet again to slide the door open, but his hands were shaking. You can do it, I whispered. I think we re good. He steeled himself, looking very much like he was crossing some sort of internal threshold. He pulled the door aside, revealing his room exactly as we left it. We took it in. I am gonna answer Monica, he said, with not a whole lot of vigor to his voice, getting up and creeping out of the room. The rest of us followed, stopping in the living room while he continued to the door. I went to Twitter, searched hide, and sorted by new. Evelyn, meanwhile, grabbed the remote from the stand and turned the TV, now hideless, on, and maneuvered through the Roku channels. What are you looking for? Hyro asked. Just like a beep channel, I guess, she replied. The news. My scrolling wasn't yielding anything of help or insight, though it was clear, via the confused posts from seemingly around the whole world, that the scope of whatever happened was global. My focus shifted to Ravi, who was standing on the welcome mat. I pressed against the door peephole. He hadn't moved in quite some time. "Everything all right, man?" I asked didn't he reply. Just stood there. Frozen eye approached slowly. She I heard him. Croak-eye reached him, patting him on the shoulders and urging him to detach from the door viewer. He finally did, leaning against the wall at first, before slowly sliding to a seat on the floor. I peered into the hallway through the hole outside. His neighbor, the one knocking, looked like she'd been skewered. Decimated an explosion of blood in the hallway. What I felt a buzz on my phone. I pulled it out, beep again, beep, before I could even process. I heard Ravi and Evelyn react. There's another one, it says, beep again, beep. Now, I turned to see the foreboding word on the TV. Beep. So we should hide again. Hyro called much like Ravi. I was shell-shocked. AJ, what do you think we should do? He repeated. Evelyn, I said, trying to force the words out of my mouth. You had good instincts the first time. What beep, what do you think, beep? How much time do you think we have? She asked Beep how much time passed between when I first saw the word hide and when we felt that presence in the closet. Beep, it might be been 10 minutes. I heard Ravi mutter, almost lifeless. I donned tea then. Evelyn interrupted herself. Wait, what did you just see outside? She started approaching the door. I stopped her. I don't think it'll be good for you to see it. Are you serious? She responded. Beep, yes. Beep, I said, immediately realizing that lying might have been smarter. We can't assume we have the same amount of time. Ravi added. I went with my pitch. Do we try the same spot? Hyro started pacing, thinking, tapping his foot. It's if we think about it. It said hide, and we hid. Now it's saying again. And be obvious, Libep, that means that whatever happened is gonna happen again. He gave us a look, as if he could see, in our drained expressions, what was waiting on the other side of the door. That's a great recap, man, I said. What I mean, he said, struggling, is that when you play as a kid, if you kept picking the same spot over and over, eventually it catch up to you. Are we really trying to apply some sort of logic to this? Ravi mumbled. Evelyn fortified herself. I think yes, right. It's beepnits beep. And I can't believe I am saying this. But we need to operate on gut. And beep get beep tells me we pick better spots this time. But beeps but beep makes it sound like we should split up, I said, looking around, slowly realizing that the limited real estate we had to work with meant. This suggestion made more sense than I would be liked. I turned to Ravi. Where should we all go? He shook his head, palmed his forehead a few times, as if to slap himself back to reality. He started, thinking, 2 under my bed. He grimaced. letting neurons collide in his mind. One of us in the utility closet, the other laundry closet. He got up and pointed. One of the closets was right behind me. Life in him again. Now, my eyes flitted to Hyro and Evelyn, who ran into the bedroom. Ravi gave me a nod before entering the laundry closet and awkwardly squeezing in with the washer and dryer. Closing his door, I entered the utility closet and closed mine rather. I tried to. The door wasn't clicking shut. Beep, beep, I said. Ravi, the door. It has not. But then I fought the urge to say anything more. If time was up, I'd compromise my spot. Beep. Compromise his spot too, if I kept talking. I tried a few more times to get it to close. Then I committed, terrified out of my mind, to gripping the handle and holding the door shut. I tried to keep my shaking hand and quickening breath in check as the silence overtook again. Beep, complete beep, silence. And beep then, beep, that presence. I felt a light tug at the door. I kept my hold firm. But didn't he try to overpower? Didn't he want to completely give it away? And again, it stopped. The feeling disappeared, and I waited 15 seconds before sneaking a look at my phone to see that the again warning was gone. I heard the sound of Ravi's door swing open first. I followed with mine. He was emotional. I forgot that door is beep. I got scared, man. And I was all good at all right, man. I know I even heard you call for me. And I didn't I panicked. And I thought we alive, man. It's all right. And immediately I remembered it wasn't just beep-as beep. Beep Evelyn and Hyro beep right, he said. We rushed to his bedroom, nothing at first. The two hadn't emerged yet. For a moment, the horrifying thought that we'd be pulling their corpses out from under the bed rushed past me. Guys, I said, coast is clear. Quick silence for quite some time before they finally shuffled out in one piece. Alive as they shifted from crawl to bend to standing. I wanted to hold them, hold everyone, for just a second. I felt a newfound appreciation for life and their faces and personalities. Another buzz on my phone. I took a look. Beep, break time, beep. I let out a sigh of relief and showed the message to the others. I guess that's good, Evelyn said. A second to catch our breaths. After this beep, beep craziness, beep. But then what? Ravi asked. Is this just gonna beep continue? Beep. We walked into the living room together. Nervously. We haven't even gotten a single second to wrap our heads around this. Evelyn again. Something in me didn't seem right. I didn't feel good. Hey, Ev, how do you know that we should be stayed in the closet for 5 minutes? Hyro asked. Somewhat pointedly I clocked minor annoyance in her face at the question. I didn't he beep no beep. Anything, it was a guess. But I mean, yeah, you guys were beep lucky I was here and pushed for it. Because beep-fic beep, were you all being stubborn? Hyro wore a strange expression as he looked at her. All right. Sounds like you want to say something more, she said. Why would I? What makes you think? I.D. Ravi interrupted Hyro by stepping between the two of them. Beep, holy beep. Beep, keep your heads on, people. But as he said it, and maybe it was just an aberration in my mind, but I couldn't help but feel something significant stir within me. Something beep really beep inflame, as if even though his face was straight, he was concealing some sort of inner smile at what was happening. Hyro, I think you refocusing your skepticism in the wrong direction. I said Ravi's expression turned irritated, which all but confirmed it for me. I don't know if you want to be mad at the person that saved us the first time. I said, trying to make a point by motioning to Evelyn. But as I looked at her, something felt wrong there too. I contained it. Or rather, the person who wanted to beep open the closet door beep. And then something even more obvious hit me. Wait, Ravi. Beep you tried to beep me beep. And all of a sudden, I was glaring at him. My temper rising by metric tons every second, as if it was all starting to make sense. Evelyn and Hyro joined me. Ravi looked incredulous. I already admitted that I beep up with the door beep. I confess to you. Beep, why? Are you trying to make things worse? I was trying to calm them down then. Noticing us approach him, he backed towards the kitchen cabinets. He pointed at me. You were on your phone when this first happened, he said, as if he were having his own revelation. You were waiting for it to start that S and beep insane beep, beep misdirect. I said, positive, that I couldn't trust him. But as my eyes turned to Evelyn and Hyro, I realized I couldn't trust them either. Couldn't trust anyone. Beep still. Beep. Ravi absolutely needed to be the first to go. The first to be disposed of. He grabbed a knife from the cupboard and held it out at us, and only the smallest thought in the back of my mind was telling me that we were being toyed with, that it was so incredibly obvious that whatever this was, it had a handle on us. But unfortunately, that understanding was academic for me at best. As I kept finding string after string of thoughts and emotions connecting, everything adding up, the logic beep sound beep, my emotions beep inflamed beep break time. Evelyn said, "It's breaking us." Beep, of course. She would know that though. If she were in on it beep, we all looked at her. I watched for sudden movements from any of these traitors, these bastards. Even a millimeter shift, wouldn't he get past me? It's overriding us. It's flooding us with anger that isn't ours. And beep real, as it feels beep, she faced her phone at us. beckoning us to read it clearly. Beep, break, time, beep. We can't fall to it. And that small, grounded part of me took over. Even though I was sure with everything in my soul that she, Ravi, and Hyro were the source of everything that was happening. Ravi's grip on the knife tightened as he and the rest of us remained in the bizarre equilibrium of our four-way standoff. Beep it, all of you. Beep, I thought to myself, before I felt a lightness overtake me, like an insatiable hunger fading, or extreme fear dissipating, when you realize that noise in the other room wasn't a person, but rather something knocking over. My feelings of unrest and paranoia were gone. My phone screen, once again, returned to its default background. It was hard to describe how I felt now. Beep, lucidity. Shame, beep, I looked at Ravi sadly. His head hung low as he put the knife back in its place. Hyro turned to Evelyn first. I am sorry, he said. Then to Ravi. Sorry. Sorry, guys, Ravi. I am sorry. Me. You re-welcome, assholes. Evelyn. Beep, we deserved that, beep. That was beep insane, Ravi said. Like a beep-up roller coaster ride, said Evelyn. I didn't that. Beep, that wasn't totally mebeep, Hyro said. Like beep something was in mebeep. And it was okay, man. I was getting tired of saying it. And certainly I, out of everyone, didn't he deserve to impart forgiveness anyway, after where my own head was at only 30 seconds ago. We need to write something down like beep, we are susceptible. Don T, forget beep, started Ravi. We just need to remember to keep your heads on. I interrupted. Remember. But I think the fear that again would pop up on our phones drove him to start rummaging for some paper. Start scribbling some words on it, while the rest of us tried to soak in the reprieve of beep nothing. Happening beep, every half second. A luxury I wanted to say sorry, another 20 or so times. Something I was sure wasn't a feeling unique to me. I feel like I am losing myself, I said. It felt like I was in a dream at this point. Yeah, said Ravi. Beep, yeah, beep, Hyro said, looking at us carefully. Probably all gonna die. Should we say our words, I guess. Don T talk like that, said Evelyn. How many people do you think are dead? Hyro asked. I went to the TV, turned it on, toggled through the home page, until I found the live stream of a soccer game 1 fixed camera angle. Everyone in the stadium torn apart. Players on the field within frame eviscerated. I returned to the home page, navigating in an attempt to find a different live program. I clicked on what appeared to be a news channel I hadn't heard of before. The sight of an empty desk appeared. Wires leading under the desk made me think that perhaps the anchor was hiding under it. We are trying to report, he said, knowing that the signal is going to cut out. IV survived so far. Survived, whatever exactly this might be. But the carnage from footage IV seen is extensive. Beep, I strongly recommend beep. The broadcast was interrupted by the new word. Beep, seek, beep again. In classical lettering, and the screen cracked, then shattered with a loud pop, sending bits of glass onto the floor, as did the screen on my phone that ID placed on the coffee table, as did the phones in Evelyn and Hyro, S-hands too, reactively dropped on the floor by the pair. A weak bounce, before settling I panicked. Seek, beep, I said desperately, trying to jolt my brain to the task. Maybe something out of place. Evelyn said, what if we have to find what's killing everyone? Said Hyro. I started. But I couldn't even muster up a close to the sentence. I ran to the balcony, outside, to see if there was something obvious to look for in the sky, in the city. What I spotted on the neighboring high-rises was blood-stained curtains, unrecognizable bodies where blinds were lifted. And as my eyes darted from spot to spot, beep-a lead beep, a small TV in one of the apartments. The screen looked unbroken, a word on it. I couldn't make out 5 letters, was the best I could do. Beep it as the screens. Beep, I said. We need to find a screen that still works. I ran back into the living room. Does anyone have binoculars? They all looked at me. Why the beep would anyone have binoculars? Ravi asked. There's a screen, beep, I think. Beep, in one of the other apartment buildings. It's working. There's a word. But I can't see it. We need to find another one. I don't know. I ran into Ravi's office. Computer screen broken. Beep, fuck beep. Grabbed his laptop, shattered. Beep, no beep. I nervously tapped my chest with the fingertips of both of my hands, while the rest desperately searched for something viable to beep. Did I have to run to the other apartment? Beep, beep, would there even be enough time? Beep, beep, how would I even get in? Beep. And then, like a bolt of the blue, it hit me. Ravi, where's your phone? His voice was a little confused. I don't no man. I lose it all the time, beep, find it. Beep, you really think that's it? We were looking for a functioning screen at S. The only one we haven't ruled out yet. I turned to Hyro next. Check out the other apartments on this floor. See if any of the doors are unlocked. If they are, go inside. Check everything, phones, laptops, TVs, doesn't matter. See if there's a message intact on any of them. On it, he said, rushing to the door, opening it, freaking out at the body in front of it, nearly tripping, then composing himself and rushing into the hallway as the door closed behind him, We tore apart. Ravi S. apartment next beep. Couch cushions beep. Where do you usually lose it? I asked beep. My head peeked under the bed beep. Peeked into counters alongside Evelyn. Desperately. I done T-man, he answered. It es beep. But sometimes I literally just chuck it across the room, beep, helpful, supremely helpful beep, in the bathroom. I looked in the medicine cabinet, then back into his room, to his closet, checking the pockets of all of his pants. I started to feel the inevitable looming. Beep, this was the one that was going to beep us. Wasson beep. Beep, love you guys. I heard Evelyn say almost under her breath, like she could feel it too. No tangible ticker counting down, but a feeling in my chest, a train closing in, with us tied to the tracks. Ravi running to the TV stand, looking behind, then under books, under shelves, and I was back in the living room again. Beep, sere beep, there was nothing left. My eyes lowering to the painful game we started our deadly evening with Monopoly specifically, to the messy pile of 50s, 20s, and 10s on Ravi S side of the board. I knew his etiquette for swapping some of them out for hundreds was quite poor. The cash stacked high, which made sense. He was beep crushing beep all game. Beep, and yet beep I crouched and did an even more aggressive sweep of the spot that we started our desperate search at, to discover his preserved Samsung Galaxy, a 35 underneath the fake money, with a new word to greet me. Beep, smile, beep. And it really did feel like time was up this time. I found Didio Havera smile. I screamed like a beep auctioneer. Evelyn turned first from her spot. In the kitchen, what? I ripped the phone from the ground and held up the message to her. Smile. She mirrored my uncomfortable expression, all teeth. Feigned happiness, as did Ravi, as he bolted out of the room, before even seeing the message on the phone beep or beep. My intense eyes Hyro threw open the door. Couldn't he find anything? I am sorry, he screamed. He saw our wide, smiling faces, and our eyes screaming at him to get the hint, as I tried to mouth the word while keeping my pose. But instead, it sounded like SMUHHH, and yet, despite the confusing sight with the luckiest beep in the world, he copied and showed me those pearly whites. I retained my beaming smile, feeling a tear of fear travel down my cheek. My eyes glued to Ravi S phone in my hand, beefing and praying that we wouldn't all get torn apart beep, and the word disappeared. I showed the group the proof, and one by one, our cheery expressions dropped to our default nervous frowns. Beep, resting scowl face, restored beep, a collective exhale. I can beep do this, said Ravi. I know, Evelyn added, and unlike some of the gaps we'd been afforded in the past, I already spotted a new message on the single remaining functional phone left in my right hand. Beep point to sacrifice beep I could feel the group S eyes on me. I couldn't he hide the misery. What? Ravi asked. Point to sacrifice, I said, barely legible. AJ. Evelyn asked I, tilted the phone so they could read it. I couldn't he say the words any louder, my body. Wouldn't he let me underneath the words? A timer had been running, one that was already down to beep 145, 144, 143 beep by the time I flashed them the phone end, yet still. All of us needed more seconds to let it settle. I felt defeated. Truly, this time. All right, said Ravi, cutting through the holding pattern. So what? We talk it through with the time we have left. Maybe we all agree on someone to point at. I mean, hey, Beep knows what I have to live for. Hyro next. My family, mom, dad, siblings. I wasn't even thinking of them this whole time. They were all probably dead. I interrupted, his words hitting me immediately, and curbing any remaining social etiquette I had left Beepavrion I had ever known was likely gone. Beep I. Ooh, beep wow beep, Evelyn smiled at us softly. I just have you guys now, she said. So, yeah, beep fuck this. Beep, she said. Beep immediate Libep, pointing to herself, almost causing me to die right there in fear. She'd be torn apart immediately. But the counter was still ticking down. I flipped the board on this beep, she said. Without wavering, beep 1. 12 a beep beep 1. 11 beep beep 110 beep. Hyro pointed to himself. Beep it, yeah. You know what? I flipped the board too. He said. I looked at him, almost nervously exasperated. Really? After beep all that beep, guys. Beep 1, 7 beep beep 1, 6 beep beep 1, 5 beep, if their beep is beep a beep, Ravi said, unlikely. But what the beep may be, we dodge that bullet. He curled his index finger back towards himself, flipped the beep board. I just looked at them. It was strange to feel a deluge of selfish thoughts flood into me all at once. Beep 0. Forward I bet beep 0. 39 beep beep 0. 38 beep, all right. I said, copying my peers. Let us do it. I pointed at myself too, like we were all playing Simon Says or something. Beep 0. 33 beep beep 0. 32 beep beep 0. 31 beep. I took an appreciative look at my old friends, the longest standing friends I'd ever had in my beep life, and then at the Monopoly board we were playing on. It really was quite an awful game. I wasn't sure why we'd always subject ourselves to it. Beep 0. 27 beep beep 0. 26 beep. I saw the pile of money on free parking. Beep 0. 23 beep beep, 022 beep. The only way to make it fun was to play with beep rules house, rules beep, 0, 20 beep beep, 0, 19 beep, wait. I said, follow me. I sprinted to the door. I opened it, held it open for the rest beep, 0, 15 beep beep, 0, 14 beep beep, 0, 13 beep. I pointed at Ravi S. dead neighbor in the hallway in front of the door. Monica. We didn't know what we were dealing with until she died. Her beep sacrifice beep gave us a chance. I said, almost looking up, as if I was speaking to whoever was enacting this terror on us. I was aware it was a reach. Beep 0, 9 beep beep, 0, 8 beep. And we've probably lost a lot of humanity since then. So sorry, I said, pointing at her. And thank you. Beep 0, 6 beep beep, 0, 5 beep. And my best friends pointed too. A real morbid way to close things out, with a clash of sorry. And thank you escaping them, as what would likely be their last words. I had really interrupted what was quite a nice moment inside for this strangeness beep, 0, 2 beep beep, 0, 1 beep beep, 0, 0 beep house rules. I said, and then I prepared myself for it beeping. Then annihilation beep, but nothing came instead. Ravi S. phone in my hand, just read beep good game beep, before defaulting to Ravi S. homepage, picture a borzoi. He didn't even own one. He was just obsessed with that breed of dog. We stood there for 10 minutes it felt, before we finally ventured inside. Single file, like a group of polite zombies. I was unsure what to make of what had happened, what to do, who to check on, the state of the world, what was going on around me. I sat back down at the Monopoly board. The others, in an almost Manchurian Candidate sort of way, took their spots too. I think it was my turn, I said slowly. I grabbed the dice. I rolled. It was a 10. I tapped my top hat icon on each square until I landed on beep short line railroad beep. You want to buy it? Evelyn asked me. I thought about it for too long. Finally, sure. Story 2. My grandfather committed suicide in 2019. I translated his diary and found out what he was hiding from us since back in 1958. This is his story if you're confused. You should probably start at the beginning beep, February 1. 1959, continue at beep. We froze. We'd been awaiting this moment anxiously for hours. But when it came at last, we still hesitated. Blow the beep. Do it, Sergei, yelled Yuri, breaking our horrified trance. Our commander smiled cruelly and hit the detonator. There was a loud crack and a boom, like thunder in the distance. A flash of flame illuminated the beep, casting it in sharp-cut shadow and light. I covered my ears. There was a rumble that echoed across the mountain. For a second, the world held still. Then the whole beep above the tent began shifting, the vibrations setting off an unstoppable chain of motion. Tons of snow were moving, sliding down with an unsettling groaning sound. The mass gained speed and struck the tent. With horrible force, silence fell on the mountain. Slowly, we picked ourselves up. The tension was palpable. We waited with bated breath. Did it work? I said finally. My voice hoarse no one answered for a second, listening intently. Then Eerie whispered an answer. I think it did, he said. We should go chie a horrifying scream, louder than any before, cut through the night. My heart sank. A chill running down my spine. Eerie swore, and Sergei drew his pistol. Looks like we're not done here yet, soldiers. Get ready. The tent bulged, and then split as someone tore it open from inside. Figures streamed out, running towards our tree line. They weren't screaming. They weren't taken, but my heart sank. As the last 4 shapes emerged from the ruined shelter, 4 loud screams sounded across the mountainside. Once again the things staggered through the snow, limbs uncoordinated, as if whatever force gave the bodies movement and strength was not used to these new hosts, but they were moving fast, following the fleeing hikers, and heading straight for us. Prepare to fire, Sergei commanded, his voice cold as iron. If it moves, beep it. My surviving comrades kneeled in the snow, rifles trained on the incoming figures. With a crack of gunfire, we fired our first volley. We aimed with all the skill we had, trying desperately to make sure the hikers, who hadn't yet been taken, wouldn't die. In our crossfire, one of the screaming ones went down, and I cheered, only to curse in fear as his cry of insane pain was raised up by another of the fleeing hikers. Were these things invincible? Would death only make them leap to a fresh target? Another volley set my ears ringing, and 2 more bodies fell to the ground. Their screams were silenced only for a second, before a pair of the fleeing hikers stumbled, twitched, and took up the agonized cry. Panic spread through our group like wildfire. Discipline collapsed. The screaming men were getting closer, our gunfire doing nothing to stop their advance. First one, then 2 soldiers turned and fled into the forest. Then we were all running, terror seizing our minds in a horrible grip. We ran through the midnight forest, the screams of the following things echoing around us. I cried out as the ground below me suddenly fell away, and I tumbled down a small beep. A stream ran at its bottom, and I fell straight into it. Ice-cold tendrils immediately spreading through my body. My comrades ran after me, some falling as I had, some keeping their footing. Sergei stood beside me and lifted me up. What do we do? I said desperately, panic threatening to overwhelm me again. Sergei didn't have time to answer. Over the lip of the beep, we had fallen down. 4 shapes appeared. Their screams were deafening. The next moments are only a blur in my memory. I remember desperate gunfire as the 4 slavering figures ran among us, their screaming mixing with our own cries of fear and confusion. The corruption spread quickly. Men falling dead, others taking up their inhuman shout. One memory is clear as glass in my mind. A screaming figure, a soldier I had known as Igor Pashenko, staggered towards me, his mouth open in a disfiguring grimace. I stumbled backwards, tripping on a prone body, and falling to the ground. I would have died. I beep died. But then Sergei jumped in front of me. He never panicked. He may have been cruel, a beep and a murderer, but he never panicked. As Pashenko screamed at him, Sergei aimed his pistol and began firing. His aim was flawless. 1 bullet, 2, 3, almost a whole magazine dumped into Pashenko's chest. All but 1 shot as the soldier fell to the ground, and whatever force had moved his muscles fled to find a new host. Sergei put the gun under his own jaw and fired. Then Yuri was picking me up. Run, Mikhail, run. Back to the base. I didn't question his command, didn't ask why we would go back there. I fled, Yuri beside me. As the screaming tore through the remainder of our group, we had gotten away. But the things were soon in pursuit. As we staggered through the snow, we could hear them behind, their agonized cries slowly gaining on us. My legs burned, weakness and cold sapping my strength. I would have given up and laid down, waiting for death. If Yuri hadn't kept me going, we dashed through the ruined gate of our former base. The things some 100 meters behind the darkness in the ruins was absolute, and we would have soon been lost if Yuri hadn't quickly found a battery-powered light. We ran downwards, through the levels of the base, the screaming now closing in behind. If they caught sight of us, this close, it would be the end. Where are we going? I panted, tears of fear and exhaustion streaming down my face. We're trapped down. Here Yuri's face was set in stone. We can't beep them, Mikhail, he answered. If that avalanche and all the gunfire we hit them with couldn't do it, I don't know what will then. What are we going to do? He glanced over at me for a second as we fled through the dark. Then he raised his free hand. Grasped in it were 2 grenades. One of these opens the caves on level 5. I lure them inside, and I hide. Once they've followed me, I'll sprint out. You have to be ready, Mikhail. The second I'm out of that cave, you blow the entrance. We'll cause another rock fall. We will trap them again. I realized. We will seal the cave off exactly Yuri smiled grimly. He beeped one of the grenades at my chest, and I took it in shaking hands. We tore into level 5. The ground was strewn with corpses. The dead left in the wake of the screaming one's escape, lying in heaps around us. Our pursuers weren't far behind. I could hear their thudding footsteps, their terrible cries. We were running out of time. Yuri sprinted towards the pile of rubble sealing off the caves. Hide quickly, he called out. I leapt to the side of the room, taking cover behind an overturned work table. A dead body lay there, its eyes open in death. A grimace of shock and pain set on its face forever. A loud bang shook the whole level as Yuri blasted his way into the caves. The walls groaned ominously, their structure damaged. Thousands of tons of rock above us, pressing down. With terrible pressure, the screaming ones were approaching. Their cries were deafening. Yuri's light went dark as he pushed deeper into the unseen cave. There was a quiet thud as he lay it down. The bait was set. We didn't have to wait long. The cries of the things in pursuit rose in a crescendo. As they crashed onto level 5, they didn't stop and dived straight into the caverns. Following the light, I leapt from behind the table and ran to the cave entrance. A grenade pin clinked onto the ground as I pulled it out. Gripping the safety lever in sweaty hands, I waited, my heart thudding, my breath coming in short gasps. Desperation began building inside me as I realized that something must have gone horribly wrong. Yuri wasn't coming out. How long could I wait? How long did I have? Suddenly, my friend's voice cut through the cacophony of pain, echoing from the black cavern. Blow the entrance, Mikhail. Do it now, he yelled from the dark. I couldn't. I wouldn't. My friend was in there, and I couldn't consign him to this death sentence. Yuri, I screamed desperately. I can't. My friend limped into view, staggering around a corner of the passage. 4 shapes leapt up behind him, all attention on Yuri. He hadn't been able to hide from them. We were out of time, out of options. Do it, Mikhail. You have to. He couldn't get any further. I saw one of the pursuing bodies collapse. Yuri twitched, staggered, and felt tears blinded me. I released the safety lever and leapt back behind cover. There was a flash of light and a deafening boom. The screaming was drowned out. The walls shook and the cave collapsed. Tons of rock smashed down, shattering on the ground. A cloud of dust sprang up, setting my lungs on fire. I peered through it. With watering eyes, the cave was sealed. A wall of rock had fallen in its entrance. Blocking it off, I fell to the ground and wept for my lost friend. This is the last entry in my grandfather's journal, except for those last words. Beep, God help us. They're still out there, Beep. no dead soldiers are mentioned in the old investigations of the Dyatlov Pass incident. I presume whatever arm of the government sent my grandfather to that unknown base had gotten there first, drawn by reports of missing hikers, and made sure their involvement would never be found. Out in 2019, the Russian government announced it was opening a new investigation of the Dyatlov Pass incident. The conclusion was that the accident was caused by an avalanche. I guess they're not completely wrong, or not outright lying. I think it was this reminder of his past that sent my grandfather over the edge, pushing repressed memories into his mind. I can't help but wonder if his last written words were true. Are they still in the caves? I wonder if, somewhere out there in the icy Russian waste, buried beneath the Ural Mountains, 4 men, one of them a hero and my grandfather's long-lost friend, are screaming to this day. Story 3. The salt air used to taste clean. That's what Elias remembered most keenly in those first terrifying weeks when he arrived at the Sentinel Rock lighthouse, perched like a lonely, crumbling tooth on a jagged spur of granite miles from the mainland. The ocean breeze had carried the sharp, familiar tang of brine and kelp. It had been bracing, a welcome reminder of his years as a fisherman before the accident claimed his leg and his nerve. Now, 3 months into his solitary caretaking stint, the air tasted wrong, stale, like the inside of an old crypt washed by a polluted tidid, started subtly, as such things often do. The tides seemed erratic, not wildly so, but enough that Elias, whose life had been dictated by the moon's pull, found himself double-checking the almanac. The waves lapping against the rocks below the lighthouse sounded different at night, less a rhythmic sigh, more a wet, sucking gurgle, as if something vast were breathing just beneath the surface. He dismissed it as imagination, the product of isolation, and the constant, mournful cry of the wind funneling through the tower's cracks. Then came the stillness, not the peaceful calm of a windless day, but a profound, suffocating silence that descended without warning. The gulls would vanish. The constant whisper of the wind would cease entirely. Even the relentless crash of the waves seemed muted, dampened. In this unnatural quiet, Elias would hear other things, a faint, wet clicking, like immense crab claws tapping against the submerged base of the rock, a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate up through the stone floor of the lighthouse, making his teeth ache and his bad leg throb with phantom pain. It felt like the island itself was holding its breath, waiting one overcast afternoon. Inspecting the generator shed clinging precariously to the leeward side of the rock. Elias found a dead cormorant. It wasn't he just dead. It was wrong. Its sleek black feathers were matted with a viscous, iridescent slime that smelled faintly of ozone and rotting shellfish. More disturbing were its eyes, or rather, the lack of them. In their sockets writhed tiny, translucent worms, pulsing with a sickly internal light, and carved crudely into its chest, as if by a clumsy, enormous talon, was a spiral symbol, primitive, deeply unsettling. He flung the thing into the churning sea, scrubbing his hands raw afterwards. The image of those pulsing worms burning behind his eyelids, the manifestations, escalated. The spiral began appearing elsewhere, etched faintly in the condensation on the kitchen window one foggy morning, scratched into the rime ice on the lantern room glass. Once, waking from a nightmare of drowning in infinite blackness, Elias found it traced in the dust beside his narrow cot. The lines disturbingly precise. Each time, a wave of profound, irrational dread washed over him. A feeling of being observed by something vast and utterly indifferent. The sea itself became a source of terror. On moonless nights, he'd see vast, impossible shapes moving beneath the Inkai surface, not whales or sharks, but shifting, amorphous shadows that blotted out the faint phosphorescence of plankton. They seemed to drift with purpose towards Sentinel Rock, only to dissolve into the depths mere yards from the jagged shore. The water near the base of the lighthouse began to churn with unnatural violence, throwing up geysers of that same iridescent slime he'd seen on the bird. It coated the rocks, hardening into a glassy, obsidian-like crust that seemed to absorb the light. The worst was the black brine. It started seeping from the joints in the old iron pipes. First, just a trickle in the rusty sink in his quarters, water tinged with an oily darkness, and carrying that same ozone rot stench. Then one night, the kitchen faucet coughed and spewed a thick, viscous stream of the stuff, like congealed blood mixed with crude oil. It pooled in the sink, seemingly alive, tendrils of darkness reaching sluggishly over the porcelain edge. Elias shut off the main valve, his hands shaking. He tried the radio, only static, a hissing white noise that sometimes coalesced into a guttural, subsonic murmur that made his skull vibrate. The mainland, when he could get a connection through the worsening, unnatural fog that now perpetually clung to the rock, sounded distant, tinny, impossibly far away. Escape felt less like a possibility and more like a cruel joke. His isolation deepened into a horrifying intimacy with the presence. He found himself drawn to the lantern room at night, not to tend the light, but to stare out into the abyssal dark of the sea. The beam, usually a comforting spear of light cutting through the gloom, now seemed feeble, almost apologetic, as if afraid to illuminate what lay beyond its reach. The silence pressed in, thick and heavy. In its depths, he began to perceive thoughts, not words, not even concepts he could grasp, but vast, slow-moving impressions. Ancient hunger, crushing pressure. A cold so profound it transcended temperature. It was the weight of the deep ocean given sentience. A leviathan consciousness, older than continents, dreaming dark dreams in the abyssal trenches. Gulmaroth, the name surfaced in his mind, unbidden, accompanied by an image of endless, crushing blackness and rows of crystalline teeth, the size of cathedral spires. It wasn't a name he chose. It was a label forced upon him, a terrifying glimpse into the entity's incomprehensible nature. Sleep became impossible. When exhaustion claimed him, he plunged into nightmares of suffocating in lightless depths, of being drawn inexorably downwards towards a maw that spanned leagues, feeling his bones crack under impossible pressure. He'd wake gasping, the taste of salt and decay thick in his throat, convinced the wet, clicking sounds weren't just outside the thick lighthouse walls, but inside, scratching at the inner stone. His reflection began to betray him. The gaunt, haunted face in the bathroom mirror, lit by the flickering emergency lamp, sometimes seemed overlain for fleeting seconds. His eyes would appear depthless black, like obsidian pebbles. His shadow, cast by the lamp, would writhe independently, elongating into impossible, multi-jointed shapes that crawled up the wall before snapping back to normal. He stopped looking in mirror's desperation, drove him to the Lighthouse S forgotten undercroft, a dank, low-ceilinged space carved into the living rock, accessible only by a rusted iron hatch beneath a loose flagstone in the storage room. Inside, amidst crates of mildewed manuals and corroded tools, he found a watertight chest. Within lay the journals of previous caretakers. Their entries started with mundane reports, then descended into frantic, barely coherent scrawls. They described the same phenomena: the wrong tides, the suffocating silence, the clicking, the hum, the black brine, the spiral. The final entries were chillingly similar. It knows I am here. It watches from the deep. The light, Docent T. warned ships away. It calls it K. Henderson, 1923. The silence is eating my thoughts. I hear it breathing in the stones. It wants out. It wants to rise. A Finch, 1938. The brine is in the pipes, in the cistern. I tasted it. It tastes like home. not mine. It's the spiral is the door. The light is the key. I am the offering, J. Miller, 1951. The entry ended mid-sentence. The ink smeared, as if by a wet hand Elias slammed the journal shut. Cold sweat plastering his shirt to his back. Offering. Key. The dread solidified into a crushing certainty. He wasn't just trapped. He was part of a cycle, a ritual. Sentinel Rock wasn't a warning beacon. It was a lodestone, a focal point for something unimaginably ancient and ravenous. The lighthouse, with its piercing light, was a signal fire in the dark, not for lost ships, but for Gulmaroth, drawing its attention, marking the spot where the veil between worlds was thin, and the caretaker, was the anchor. The sacrifice that kept the door cracked open, feeding the entity with his fear, his isolation, his very presence. That night, the storm hit, not a natural storm, but a tempest conjured from the entity's rising fury. Waves, black as oil and taller than the lighthouse itself, slammed into Sentinel Rock with earth-shaking force. The tower groaned, ancient stones grinding. Rain lashed horizontally, not water, but sheets of freezing, stinging brine that smelled of deep ocean decay. The wind shrieked, not like air, but like the agonized cries of drowned things. The generator died. Darkness swallowed the lighthouse, absolute and suffocating. Only the intermittent flashes of lightning, sickly green and purple, illuminated the chaos. In those strobing moments, Elias saw them. Shapes coalescing from the churning black water below, not solid, but shifting masses of darkness, tentacles of pure shadow lashing against the rock, pulling themselves upwards with impossible strength. They left trails of that same iridescent slime, glowing faintly in the unnatural dark. The wet clicking was deafening now, a cacophony coming from all sides. Inside and out he scrambled up the spiraling iron stairs to the lantern room. The only place left. The great Fresnel lens was dark. The storm windows rattling violently. Outside, the sea was a heaving maelstrom, and in its center, illuminated by a ghastly phosphorescence rising from the depths, was it not the whole entity that was impossible, unthinkable, but a manifestation, a colossal, indistinct shape, blacker than the surrounding dark, a mountain range of shadow rising from the abyss. It pulsed with a slow, dreadful rhythm. Within its form, countless points of cold, alien light flickered like diseased stars' eyes, or perhaps just apertures into its incomprehensible mind. Tendrils thicker than ancient oaks snaked towards the lighthouse, dripping luminescent slime, the sheer scale of it, the aura of absolute, primordial otherness, struck Elias dumb with terror. This wasn't a monster. It was an ecosystem of hunger, an extinction event given form he understood then. With chilling clarity, the journal's final entries, he understood Miller's scribbled word. Offering. The lighthouse wasn't just a beacon, it was an altar. The caretaker was the flame upon it. His fear, his presence. His life fueled the light that called Gulmaroth. His isolation made him receptive, a perfect vessel for its attention. Escape wasn't just impossible, it was irrelevant. He was already claimed a final. Titanic wave struck. The lighthouse shuddered like a dying beast. Stone cracked. Elias was thrown against the cold iron railing surrounding the lens. Through the rain-lashed glass, he saw one of the vast shadow tendrils rise impossibly high, blotting out the storm-lashed sky. It hovered for a moment, dripping luminescent slime that sizzled where it hit the lantern room glass. Then, with deliberate, terrifying slowness, the tip of the tendril pressed against the glass knot to break it, to touch it where the inky darkness met the glass. The spiral symbol bloomed outward, etching itself with impossible speed, glowing with that same sickly internal light as the worms in the bird's eyes. It spread across the entire dome, a vast, intricate mandala of utter wrongness. The hum intensified, vibrating through Elias's bones, resonating in his skull, threatening to liquefy his thoughts. He felt a coldness seep into him, not from the storm, but from within, as if his blood were turning to black brine. The tendril withdrew. The storm abated as suddenly as it began, leaving an eerie, dripping silence. The unnatural fog rolled back in, thick and cloying. Below, the churning black water calmed, though it retained its unnatural, oily sheen. The shadow mountain was gone, sinking back into the crushing depths, but the spiral on the glass remained, pulsing faintly, and the lighthouse light flickered back on, not its usual clean, white beam. This light was a deep, bloody crimson, cutting through the fog like a wound in the night. Elias slumped against the railing, gasping. He looked down at his hands. His skin had taken on a faint, sickly gray pallor. His veins stood out dark blue, almost black, tracing disturbing patterns beneath the surface that faintly echoed the spiral. He felt different, hollowed out, filled with a terrible, cold awareness. The clicking sound wasn't outside anymore. It was inside his own head, a constant, wet rhythm. The hum was the sound of his own blood, moving sluggishly through alien changed veins. He understood his purpose now. He was the keeper of the light, the crimson beacon, the flame upon the altar. He was the anchor holding the door ajar. Gulmaroth had tasted his terror, marked him, and left him alive. Alive to tend the light. Alive to call it again. Alive to wait, trapped on this desolate rock, feeling the ancient hunger stir in the crushing deep below, knowing it watched him through the blood-red lens, knowing the next storm would come, and the next, each drawing the entity closer to the surface, until the day the door opened fully, and the hungry dark finally rose to claim not just Sentinel Rock, but everything beyond Elias dragged himself to the lantern room controls. His movements were stiff, jerky, as if his bones were no longer entirely his own. Didn't he try to extinguish the crimson light? He knew it wouldn't he go out. Not anymore. Instead, he leaned his forehead against the cold glass, staring out into the suffocating fog, the wet clicking in his mind, synchronized with the slow drip of black brine, now seeping steadily from the cracks in the lighthouse walls, pooling around his boots. The crimson beam pulsed, a heartbeat of doom in the endless dark. The silence pressed in, heavy with the weight of the abyss, and the patient, ancient hunger waiting below. The only sound, besides the clicking and the drip, was the faint, desperate rasp of his own, breathing the sound of the last man on earth, already half consumed, tending the light for the end of all things. Story 4. The silence in the hemlock pines cabin wasn't peaceful. It was the thick, muffled quiet of a world holding its breath. Rain lashed against the windows, blurring the dense, ancient forest into a wall of shifting gray and black. Inside, the only sounds were the frantic crackle of the fire in the stone hearth and the shallow, rasping breaths of 8-year-old Ben, bundled under a mountain of quilts on the worn sofa. His mother, Sarah, knelt beside him, a damp cloth hovering uselessly over his burning forehead. 3 days since the fever had spiked during their supposed reconnecting with nature weekend. 3 days since the phone signal vanished and the old Jeep refused to start, leaving them stranded miles from the nearest town, accessible only by a logging road, now likely washed out by the storm. Her husband, Mark, had hiked out for help yesterday morning. He hadn't returned. Mommy, Ben S.'s voice was a dry whisper, barely audible over the rain. His eyes, usually bright with mischief, were glassy pools reflecting the firelight. Is the bad man gone? Sarah S. heart clenched. There is no bad man, sweetheart. Just the storm. Daddy S. getting help. The lie tasted like ash. She told him that yesterday and the day before. Each repetition felt thinner, more brittle. The man in the trees, Ben insisted, his thin fingers plucking at the quilt. He watches. He is cold. So cold a shiver unrelated to the damp chill seeping through the cabin's log walls, traced Sarah's spine. It started the first night of Ben's fever. He'd woken screaming, babbling about a tall figure standing just beyond the ring of firelight outside the window. Sarah had seen nothing but the inky blackness and the skeletal shapes of hemlocks clawing at the sky. She chalked it up to fever dreams, but the descriptions had persisted, growing more detailed, more chilling. He*s thin, mommy, like branches, and his eyes they re-holes, empty holes that suck the light. Ben shivered violently, pulling the quilts tighter. He wants me to come out. He says it's warm where he is, but he's lying. He's so cold. Sarah stroked his damp hair, forcing calm into her voice. It's just the fever talking, baby. Close your eyes. Try to sleep. But her own gaze kept darting to the rain-streaked windows. The dense forest pressed in, a living entity breathing malice. The firelight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and coil like serpents on the rough-hewn walls. Was that just the wind moaning through the eaves, or a low, guttural sigh? The second night had been worse. Ben's temperature soared. He thrashed, crying out not just about the man, but about whispers. They in the walls, mommy, scratching, telling me to open the door. They say you're hiding something. His accusation, delivered in that frail, delirious voice, had struck Sarah like a physical blow. A secret, buried deep, a moment of selfishness, a choice made years ago that still echoed in the quiet chambers of her guilt. How could he know? Could he know? Tonight, the dread had solidified into a suffocating presence. The rain had lessened, leaving an unnatural stillness. Even the fire seemed subdued, its light barely pushing back the gloom. Ben lay unnervingly quiet, his breathing shallow and irregular. His skin felt clammy, not just fever hot, but unnaturally cold in patches. Sarah pressed her ear to his chest. His heartbeat was slow, thready, and beneath it, faintly, she swore she heard another rhythm, a deep, slow, resonant thump, 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 like a massive drum buried far underground then. The silence outside broke, not with wind or rain, but with a sound like dry twigs snapping under immense pressure. Crack, 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 it circled the cabin, slow, deliberate. Sarah froze, her blood turning to ice. She crept to the front window, peering into the oppressive blackness. The moon, hidden for days, chose that moment to tear through a rent in the clouds. Its cold, blue light washed over the clearing he stood at the edge of the trees. Ben's description, hadn't he done it justice? It was impossibly tall, easily 8 feet. Its form, seemingly woven from the shadows and skeletal branches of the hemlocks themselves. It was emaciated, limbs like knotted driftwood, draped in tatters of moss and shadow that shifted and flowed like smoke. Where a face should have been was only a deeper darkness, a void that seemed to swallow the moonlight, and the cold Sarah felt it radiate through the thick glass pane. A deep, penetrating chill that seeped into her bones and stole her breath. It wasn't the absence of heat. It was an active cold, a living frost that promised oblivion. It didn't he move towards the cabin. It simply stood, that faceless void fixed on the window, where Sarah stood paralyzed. The silence stretched, taut as a wire. The only sound was the frantic hammering of her own heart and Ben S. Week. Rasping breaths from the sofa then, a whisper, not outside, inside her own skull, a dry, rustling sound, like dead leaves skittering across stone, forming words that bypassed her ears and scraped directly against her mind. He is ready. You kept him warm, but the warmth is leaving. He belongs to the cold now, to the deep roots. You knew the price the words unlocked the vault in Sarah S. memory, flooding her with a horror far more intimate than the thing outside. 5 years ago, a different cabin, a different desperate situation. Ben, only 3, had fallen deathly ill with pneumonia during a blizzard. Trapped, no help coming. In her terror, kneeling by his tiny, struggling form, she prayed, not to any god she knew, but to the ancient, hungry silence of the wilderness itself. Take anything, anyone, just let my boy live. And in that moment of primal, selfish desperation, she felt an answering presence, a wave of profound cold, followed by a sense of acceptance. A bargain struck. Ben had miraculously recovered the next morning. They found a hiker frozen to death just a mile from their cabin. His face, a mask of terror. Sarah had buried the memory. The guilt, deep beneath layers of denial. The thing outside, hadn't he come for Ben? It had come for the debt. Her debt, paid with borrowed warmth, borrowed time. The bad man wasn't he an external monster. He was the collector of a bargain made in the darkest corner of her Soleil. Weak cough sounded from the sofa. Sarah turned, her movements sluggish with dread. Ben had pushed the quilts down. His eyes were open, clearer than they'd been in days, but filled with an ancient, terrible knowing. He looked past her towards the window, and a small, chilling smile touched his pale lips. "Yes, here, Mommy," Ben whispered, his voice unnervingly calm. "He says thank you for keeping me warm, but it is time to go home." The roots are calling as Sarah watched. A visible change began, a faint tracery of black, like frost forming on glass, spread beneath the skin of Ben S. cheeks. branching outwards like tiny, dark veins. His breath fogged the air, not with warmth, but with a plume of icy vapor. The unnatural cold spot on his chest pulsed faintly, synchronizing with that deep, subterranean thump, thump, thump. She could now feel vibrating through the floorboards the revelation, Wasson T, just about the monster outside. It was the monstrous truth within herself, her love, twisted by desperation, had made her a conduit for this ancient cold. She hadn't T saved her son. She D merely incubated him for this thing, this entity of frost and forgotten earth. A soft click echoed through the cabin. The deadbolt on the front door slid open of its own accord. Sarah screamed, a raw, ragged sound that died instantly in the suffocating silence. She threw herself towards the door, fumbling for the lock, but her fingers passed through it like smoke. The handle began to turn, slowly. Deliberately she whirled back to Ben. The black tracery was spreading faster now, crawling up his neck, branching across his forehead. His eyes, fixed on the door, held no fear, only a dreadful anticipation. The warmth was leaching out of him visibly, replaced by a terrible, serene stillness. The smell of damp earth and decaying pine needles filled the small cabin. Overpowering the wood smoke, the door creaked open, not with a blast of wind, but with a sigh of displaced air, frigid and smelling of deep, ancient soil. The towering figure filled the doorway, its void face drinking the meager firelight. The cold intensified, making Sarah's teeth chatter uncontrollably. Frost instantly bloomed across the floorboards. Racing towards the sofa, Ben sat up, not with the weakness of illness, but with a strange, fluid grace that was utterly alien. He swung his legs over the side of the sofa, bare feet touching the frost-covered floor without a flinch. He looked at Sarah, that knowing, icy smile still playing on his lips, now tinged blue. "Don't be sad, Mommy," he said, his voice clear, resonant, and devoid of any childish inflection. It sounded like wind through dead branches. "You gave me back. Now I go to the deep roots. It's warm there, under the cold." So warm he took a step towards the doorway, towards the waiting entity. Sarah tried to move, to scream, to grab him, but her limbs were leaden, frozen in place by more than just the physical cold. It was the weight of her own guilt, the crushing realization of what she'd done, what she'd invited. She had bargained with the dark heart of the wilderness, and it had taken her offering, twisting her love into a delivery mechanism for its own frigid eternity. Ben reached the threshold. The tall figure didn't touch him. It simply stepped aside, a deeper shadow against the moonlit clearing. Ben paused, looking back at Sarah one last time. His eyes were now completely black, like polished obsidian stones, reflecting nothing. The frost patterns covered his entire face, intricate and horrifyingly beautiful. "Thank you for the warmth," he said, the borrowed words sounding grotesque in that cold, hollow voice. Then he stepped out into the night the entity followed, merging with the shadows beneath the hemlocks. The door remained wide open. The unnatural cold began to recede, replaced by the normal chill of the mountain night. The fire sputtered back to life, casting frantic, dancing light. Sarah collapsed to her knees on the frost-covered floor, the silence roaring in her ears. The only evidence of Ben was the indentation on the sofa cushions and the lingering scent of damp earth. Mark would return eventually. He'd find her here, broken. What story could she possibly tell? That she'd let their son walk into the night with a monster born of her own despair. That the cold wasn't tea just outside, but inside him, inside her, a legacy of her desperate bargain. She stared at the open door, a black rectangle framing the dark, watchful trees. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It hummed, a low, subsonic vibration that resonated in her bones, in her teeth. It was the sound of the deep roots, settling, waiting, and beneath it, faintly, almost lost. She could swear she heard a familiar, icy whisper carried on the wind, drifting back from the depths of the hemlock pines. The cold remembers. The debt is paid, for now the door stayed open, an invitation, a reminder. Sarah knew she would never close it. She would sit in the flickering firelight, listening to the hum and the silence, waiting for the cold to return, because somewhere, under the ancient frozen earth, her son was warm, and the roots, deep and patient, remembered the taste of borrowed life. They always collected, eventually. Story 5. The silence of Blackwood Hollow was the first thing that settled into Daniel S. Bones. It wasn't peaceful silence, not the gentle hush after snowfall, but a thick, muffled quietude that seemed to swallow sound whole. The air, perpetually damp and smelling of loam, and something faintly, sweetly rotten, clung to his skin as he stepped onto the sagging porch of the old Ainsley place. He bought it sight unseen, a desperate lunge away from the city's relentless noise, and the gnawing, unspoken guilt that had shadowed him since Sarah's accident. A fresh start, solitude. That's what the listing promised. That's what he craved. The house itself was a monument to neglect. Victorian Bones, once proud, now slumped under decades of rain and indifference, paint peeled like scabs from weathered clapboards, revealing the gray, diseased-looking wood beneath. The windows, tall and narrow, were eyes filmed with grime, reflecting the encroaching woods with a distorted, hungry gaze. A heavy brass key, cold even in the humid July air, turned with a groan in the lock. The door swung inward, exhaling a breath of stale air laced with dust, mildew, and something else, something vaguely organic, like wet fur left in a dark corner inside. The shadows pooled thickly. Dust motes danced in the weak shafts of light that pierced the filthy windows. The floorboards groaned under Daniel S. weight. A chorus of complaints that echoed unnaturally loud in the stillness. He wandered through the parlor, his footsteps hesitant. The wallpaper, faded roses on a sickly yellow background, bulged in places, dampness blooming beneath like subcutaneous bruises. The air felt heavy, pressurized, as if the house itself was holding its breath that first night. The silence broke, not with sound, but with the absence of it where there should have been some. Daniel lay in the brass bed he found in the master bedroom. The mattress, sighing with a scent of ancient dust and decay. Outside, the woods were utterly silent. No crickets, no owls, not even the rustle of leaves. It was the silence of a vacuum, of a world holding its breath. Then, just as sleep began to pull him under, he heard it, a faint, rhythmic scritching, not from outside, from inside the wall beside his head, slow, deliberate, like something dragging a claw along the plaster. He froze, breath catching in his throat. The sound stopped. The silence rushed back thicker, more oppressive than before. He told himself it was mice. Old houses had mice the days bled into a monotonous rhythm of unpacking and battling the pervasive damp. The air grew colder inside the house, regardless of the summer heat outside. Daniel found himself wearing sweaters in July. The smell, that sweet, rotten smell, intensified, seeming to emanate from the very walls. He discovered patches of black mold spreading like spilled ink across the baseboards in the dining room, radiating an unnatural chill. Touching it sent a jolt of cold nausea up his arm. He scrubbed it away with bleach, but it returned within hours, larger, darker, its tendrils seeming to creep towards him when his back was turned. The nights were worse. The scritching returned, sometimes from the wall, sometimes from beneath the floorboards, directly beneath his bed. It was joined by other sounds. A soft, wet dragging in the hallway, like something heavy and boneless being pulled. A low, guttural whisper that seemed to seep through the cracks in the floor, too indistinct to be words, yet laden with a malice that made his scalp prickle. Sleep became impossible. Exhaustion painted dark smudges under his eyes, and the lines between wakefulness and nightmare began to blur. He'd wake gasping, convinced he'd seen a shape impossibly tall and thin, with too many joints standing motionless in the corner of his room, only for it to vanish when he snapped on the light, leaving behind a lingering scent of ozone, and Decay started seeing things during the day, too. Fleeting movements at the edge of his vision, a dark shape darting behind a door, a pale hand withdrawing into a shadowed alcove, reflections in the grimy windows that guarantee his own gaunt faces, hollow eyes watching him from the overgrown garden. He blamed the exhaustion, the isolation, the mold spores he was undoubtedly breathing in, but the fear, cold and slick, was becoming a constant companion. The turning point came when he explored the basement. The door, warped and swollen, resisted his efforts. When it finally gave way with a splintering crack, a wave of frigid, foul air rolled up, thick with that sweet-rotten stench, now overpowering, almost cloying. The stairs were rickety, treacherous. Below, the darkness was absolute, thick as oil. His flashlight beam cut a feeble swath, revealing stone walls slick with condensation, earthen floor and patterns, crude, disturbing patterns etched into the stone itself, not carvings, but gouges, deep and frantic, like something had been trying to claw its way out. And in the center of the largest wall, partially obscured by hanging roots that glistened unnaturally in the light, was a symbol, 3 intersecting spirals, radiating outwards, drawn in what looked like rust or dried blood. Looking at it made his head throb. A deep, sickening pulse behind his eyes. He felt a wave of vertigo, a sense of profound wrongness that rooted him to the spot that night. The whispers coalesced. He lay rigid in bed, sweat chilling on his skin, despite the pervasive cold. The dragging sound was in the hallway, just outside his door. Then a voice, thin and rasping, like dry leaves skittering on stone, slithered under the door crack. "Daniel, we know you re-hiding." His blood froze. He squeezed his eyes shut, praying it was a hallucination. Hiding from her, hiding from what you did, Sarah. It was talking about Sarah. The accident, the rain-slicked road, him taking the curve too fast, the sickening crunch, the silence afterward, the guilt he'd buried deep, pretended didn't he exist. He'd run to Blackwood Hollow to escape it. She whispers too, Daniel, in the dark places, she wants you to remember terror, sharp and jagged, tore through him. This wasn't just an old house. It was something else, something that fed, and it had found the rot inside him, the festering guilt he'd carried. It wasn't haunting the house. It was haunting him, using the house as an amplifier, a lens focusing his own darkness into something tangible. Something hungry. The revelation was a physical blow. The whispers, the scratching, the cold, the mold at Wasson T. random. It was drawn to his hidden shame, nourished by it. The house Wasson T. just infested. It was alive in a terrible, parasitic way, feeding on regret and manifesting it. The thing in the walls, the dragging presence, were they manifestations of his own guilt, or something older, something that lived in the hollow and used his pain as bait? The next day, the mold had spread. It covered the hallway wall outside his bedroom door, forming a grotesque, almost organic pattern that resembled a weeping face. The air hummed with a low, subsonic vibration that set his teeth on edge and made his fillings ache. The silence outside was now absolute, suffocating. The woods seemed to press in closer. The trees leaning towards the house, like curious spectators he tried to leave. He threw essentials into a bag, heart hammering against his ribs. He ran for his car, parked on the overgrown gravel drive. The engine turned over once, twice, then died, dead. The battery, brand new, was utterly drained. He tried the phone. No signal. Never had been. He realized with dawning horror the isolation he sought was now his prison. He retreated to the parlor, the only room where the mold hadn't yet visibly conquered. He sat in a threadbare armchair, shaking, watching the shadows deepen as twilight bled into night. The cold intensified, biting deep. The whispers started again. Not just one voice now, but a chorus, overlapping, insistent, coming from the walls, the floor, the very air. Stay, Daniel, we're so hungry. Show us the moment, the crunch, the silence. She waiting in the dark below. He clamped his hands over his ears. But the voices weren't auditory. They vibrated inside his skull, echoing in the hollow spaces of his guilt. He saw flashes behind his eyes, Sarah's face, pale and still in the rain-streaked windshield, the twisted metal, his own hands, white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The guilt he suppressed for years surged up, a black tide threatening to drown him. It was the fuel. The house was feasting on a new sound cut through the whispers, a soft, rhythmic knocking coming from the basement door, not frantic, patient, insistent. Tap, tap, tap like knuckles on wood he knew. He shouldn't go. Every instinct screamed at him to barricade himself in. But the whispers intensified, weaving with the knocking, pulling at him, promising an end to the torment if he just faced it, if he gave them what they craved, driven by a despair deeper than fear. Daniel rose. His legs moved as if through deep water. The cold radiating from the basement door was intense, frosting the metal knob. He grasped it, the chill searing his palm. He turned it. The door swung open silently. The darkness below was absolute, thicker than before. The stench of decay and ozone was overwhelming. His flashlight beam, weak and trembling in his hand, seemed to be swallowed just feet in front of him. The knocking had stopped. The whispers fell silent. The silence was deafening. Expectant, he took the first step down. The wood groaned, then the second. The cold intensified, wrapping around him like a shroud. Halfway down, his light caught something on the earthen floor, directly below the symbol etched on the wall. A patch of darkness, that Wasson T shadow. It was too deep, too void. It seemed to absorb the light as he watched. Frozen on the step, the darkness stirred. It didn't move like liquid or smoke. It unfolded like petals of deepest night peeling back. And within that unfolding darkness, something gleamed. Not eyes, points of light, cold and distant, like stars seen from the bottom of a grave. They fixed on him a wave of pure, primal terror, the terror of something ancient and utterly alien, washed over Daniel. This wasn't his guilt. This was something else. Something that had been waiting. Something the house, or the land, or perhaps even the collective sorrow of its previous victims, had been nurturing. His guilt was just the key that unlocked the door, the offering that woke it up. A sound emanated from the void, not a whisper, not a growl. It was a vibration, deep and resonant, that bypassed his ears and shook his very bones. It wasn't language, but he understood its meaning with horrifying clarity. It was hunger, an endless, devouring hunger. The darkness pulsed. It didn't rush towards him. It flowed, silent and inevitable, up the stairs. It didn't touch the wood. It seemed to seep through it. A spreading stain of absolute night. The cold intensified, burning now, stealing his breath. The points of light within it held him, paralyzing him not with fear, but with a dreadful, mesmerizing pull. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. His lungs were frozen. The darkness reached the top step. It flowed over his shoes. The cold was agony. 1,000 needles piercing his flesh, freezing his blood. He looked down and saw not his own feet, but only the void, swallowing him from the soles up. The points of light were closer now, filling his vision. They weren't stars. They were pupils, in eyes vast and ancient and utterly devoid of anything recognizable as life or mercy, the last thing Daniel knew. Before the darkness closed over his head and the cold extinguished his thoughts, was not fear, terrible, crushing weight of revelation. He hadn't escaped his guilt by coming to Blackwood Hollow. He had delivered himself and the feast of his remorse straight to the maw of something infinitely older and hungrier. The silence of the hollow wasn't absence. It was the silence of the grave. And the thing in the basement was its keeper above. In the empty parlor, the black mold on the wall pulsed faintly, like a slow, satisfied heartbeat. It spread further, forming new, intricate patterns, spirals within spirals, and deep within the newly settled silence of the house. A faint, wet, dragging sound began again, moving slowly up the stairs from the basement. It paused for a moment outside the parlor door, then continued down the hall, towards the master bedroom, towards the bed. The brass frame creaked softly, as if accepting a new weight. Downstairs, the basement door remained open, a rectangle of pure, hungry darkness leading into the earth, waiting. The offering had been accepted, but the hunger was eternal, and Blackwood Hollow was very, very quiet.